In the mid-1950s, an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom introduced what would come to be known as Bloom's taxonomy. What Bloom was trying to understand was how people learn, and his taxonomy is oftentimes represented as a ladder or a pyramid as the learner moves from one level to the next, leaving behind the lower level and moving toward uh, the top rungs of creating and evaluating knowledge. I think a more apt way of looking at Bloom's taxonomy is as a circle. When you conceive of his taxonomy as a ladder or a pyramid, there's a sense that you are starting from point A, moving neatly to point B, taking measurable, understandable steps toward something. What the circle suggests is that these different rungs are in fact related to one another, and we move fairly freely back and forth between them depending on what it is that we happen to be learning. And that's why I like to think in terms of sort of three different categories of learning: content mastery, active mastery, and knowledge creation. And again, the idea is that this is not a linear process of a moving toward an endpoint, but instead a process of moving back and forth in these different domains of learning. So let's think about these three different domains of knowledge. The first one is content mastery. In Bloom's terminology, he talks about things like knowledge and comprehension. The representative verbs that he refers to are things like recall, relate, identify, and recognize. Content mastery is something that's very useful if, say, you want to be a Jeopardy champion. Jeopardy champions are able to easily recall information when they need to address a particular question. Or if you want to be a champion at Scrabble, to be that sort of know it all, you need to have a large vocabulary and be able to rearrange letters in your head in order to spell the words that you know. From a learning perspective, this content mastery is something that typically we are looking to accomplish in, say, our introductory courses in a particular discipline. What we're trying to convey there is a certain amount of information, or to build a foundation so that we can have a more in-depth discussion, so that we can move toward application in particular. Active mastery suggests the ability to take content and to be able to apply it in a particular situation. So with active mastery, we're talking about the application of things, the analysis of things. In Bloom's language, some of the representative verbs are apply, practice, calculate, experiment, criticize. We oftentimes talk about physicians uh, practicing. That is, that in their practice, say if you're a surgeon, you use your content mastery to understand the inner workings of a human being. You use that content knowledge and your mastery of that knowledge to operate on somebody, to change their internal structure, sew them up, and send them off to have a happy life. Or we talk about lawyers practicing. They're applying their content knowledge in, say, a courtroom where they're recalling cases or something like that. Knowledge creation is about synthesis and evaluation. It's about creating some new way of seeing the world, a new thing. Um, the representative verbs that Bloom uses here are construct, compose, predict, evaluate. When we think about knowledge creation, we're thinking about people, for instance, who write books, or Albert Einstein, who takes his content knowledge and his ability to apply that to particular situations and begins asking questions and creating new ways of thinking about the universe. That's an extreme case. Not everybody has to be Albert Einstein. But the idea here is that one is creating something new from something that, of course, already exists, but perhaps is changing the way that people think about a particular topic. To return to our circle for just a minute, I want to emphasize the nonlinear nature of our learning. At any given point in time, we are likely engaging in all three of these things. In content mastery, we may be learning something new, while in another project, we're working on creating new knowledge. And in some other part of our thinking, we're applying these ideas to a particular topic. And so we don't want to think of this as something where we are inevitably moving toward some final purpose, but instead we're thinking about our thinking as happening at a number of different levels at any given point in time. So, where does student research fit into Bloom's taxonomy? In many of your courses, you're going to be focused on content mastery. That is, you're going to be focused in on learning the content within your discipline, whether it's sociology or biology. You're going to be learning facts. You're going to be collecting knowledge. You're going to be hearing about particular theories and what other people have found relative to those theories, how they've tested those theories. Maybe you're taking a political science class, and the professor teaches you that there are three branches of government: the legislative branch that writes bills, the executive branch, the president signs a bill, it becomes a law, and the judicial branch, which adjudicates the laws. It decides whether or not the laws are being followed properly, and sometimes interpreting the intention of the legislative and executive branches when it comes to interpreting that law. So one day you are surfing the internet and you come across a story that says that the Supreme Court has just made a decision about the rights of workers relative to their employers when it comes to, uh, say, trying to increase their wages, unionization. Well, you then apply the mastery that you have of the content and you say, oh, well, that's the judicial process that we're observing there. So Congress must have passed a law that was signed by the executive, and now the judicial branch is trying to decide how that law can be implemented in reality. Well, that's active mastery. That's the ability to take some piece of knowledge that you have and turn it into an interpretation. Now, that may not be a very profound insight, but it does show you that you are able to take some knowledge, some content, and apply it to a specific situation. When curiosity collides with active mastery and content mastery, that's the beginning of knowledge creation. One might say, well, hey, I wonder why it is that the Supreme Court will hear some cases and doesn't hear others. I wonder if there's some kind of a systematic pattern to that. If we were to pursue that research and come up with an interesting answer, then we would have knowledge creation. This is information that you can pass on to others as original findings. Student research is involved in active mastery and knowledge creation. Usually it falls somewhere in between. Knowledge creation, in the sense of doing purely scholarly work, is a high bar to set, especially for undergraduate researchers. But the idea that you can use your active mastery to perhaps create some original insights, that's where student research is going to be involved. And so we're talking about moving beyond being a student, a sponge, and beginning to become a creator of knowledge, somebody who can use knowledge to make new discoveries. Those who have active mastery and the ability to create knowledge are the people that we refer to as experts. And experts become experts through repeated trial and error, trying to apply their knowledge and trying to discover new insights. This doesn't happen overnight. It's something that can take months or even years to master. Some people never master it at all. Once we have these insights, we add them back to our content knowledge. And from there, we share them with others. And that's what I find really exciting about research is that I am creating new knowledge, adding it back into the content mastery bucket, and then going back at it again to learn a little bit more.